Welcome to Rome Howell, an ongoing conversation around a more authentic and intuitive way of marketing and business. I'm your host, Jennifer Gardner, and my passion is supporting you in creating magnetic content and systems that grow your business in a way that feels expansive, easier, and energetically aligned with your whole self. Because there's a new paradigm of business, marketing, and messaging where we show up as our multidimensional selves and connect deeply with those we are here to serve. On the show, we're going to explore how you can do that, tips for staying creative and visible without burning yourself out, and have conversations with online creators, trailblazers, and other business owners about their approach to creating work they love. Welcome to the conversation. Now let's dive in. Hello, I am back with a really exciting episode. You'll hear me say I'm excited a million times as you listen to our conversation. I spoke today with Zach Spuckler, and Zach has been I'm not even sure what you would call him, but he has taught me over the last year that we've worked together so much about the infrastructure that you really need in order to have a thriving online business, online presence where people can discover you and consume your products and your services. And that's exactly what Zach has been fundamental in helping me create over the last 12 months. So I have a conversation with him, we recorded it, and I am going to share it with you as the next episode of the Rome Howell podcast. I hope you enjoy. Welcome, Zach. Finally, you're here. I'm so excited.
I'm here. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You guys, Zach is super busy and he's got so many things going on, and we have scheduled and rescheduled this conversation so many times. And I'm so happy that he made the time in his day in order to have a conversation with me, which I'm really excited about having. Gosh, I hate using the word excited. I hear that a bazillion times a day and I'm using it myself. I hate using that word. It's so overused. But I honestly, in this case, I can't think of a better word. So I'm going to use it. What the
Love
F? Yeah. I'm just really excited because, I'm going to let Zach introduce himself and tell you a little bit about who he is. I think I met you, Zach, through Rick Mulready when I was in his accelerator.
Yes.
I think it was like 4 years ago. And I remember I was so incredibly impressed with you. He brought you in to help us at a retreat with our Facebook ads. And you blew me away with how knowledgeable you are about Facebook ads. And you've continued to blow me away ever since with your knowledge. So anyway, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I love it. I remember the retreat and I still talk to Rick, and it's so awesome to see things come full circle and continue like this.
Yes, I ran into Rick right before the pandemic hit, and he's amazing. So anyway, you guys have taught me like most of what I know about online marketing. And I mean, the two of you, you're incredible pros. You have helped me for the last, I guess it's been a year that we've been working together. I've created so much during that time, and I really do give you a lot of credit for giving me the tools.
I always say, I can give you the tools, but you're the one that built the house. So it's been amazing to watch what you've done over the last year.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been an incredibly productive time. Well, I remember asking you, I guess it was last year when we first started working together, how do you know all this, right?
Yeah, I love this question because a lot of people kind of say, oh, I'm going to get into online marketing and it's going to be amazing and you can make so much great money and you can do it really fast. And it's super straightforward as long as you know what you're doing, or you find the right mentor, or you take the right course. And, for me, that wasn't really the case. I had a lot of different mentors and courses and programs that I took over the years. And so for reference, I am 28 now. I keep saying 27, but I just turned 28. And I actually made my first dollar online at 13, about 15 years ago. That wasn't really in the online marketing space, but I share that because I think a lot of people think it's this meteoric rise to where people are now when you hear them on interviews. And, it's our own weakness in the online marketing business that we're meant to kind of sell the dream on some level. And for me, what I did was I just was very studious for years. If you can make $1 doing it online, there's a good chance I tried it. I've done MLM, I've done website flipping, I've done affiliate marketing, website building, website design services. I've done food blogging, recipe books. I mean, I've tried a lot of things. And the reason I tell you that is not to be like, oh my gosh, I have to do a million things to find what it is I want to do. The flip side of that is, you start to develop your sense of where you want to be as you age. And at 13, I didn't know if I was going to be a recipe blogger for life, an artist, an astronaut. I didn't really know. I was just playing around with the idea of creating financial freedom. And that is what has always attracted me to this space, is this idea of financial freedom. And around the age of 22, I finally achieved that. And so just to give you the timeline, that's 9 years from the idea of making money online to going full-time, leaving a master's program, starting a business, developing an LLC, really doing the thing.
Wow.
So I know your original question was like, how did you figure all this out? But I share that story because I think that context is important to realize. Figuring out is a long process, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I know people who do it a lot quicker. I've met people who come online and they do, go full-time in a year, a month. And that does happen. But I think for a lot of us, we do have the opportunity to stand on the shoulders of the people that came before us if we invest time or money, and that's great. But for some people, it's not the end of the world if it takes you a few years to figure out what you want. When I started Heart, Soul, and Hustle, which has now been my brand for about 6 years, just over 6 years, 6.5. That went from 0 to full-time in 6 months.
Wow.
Right. But that was on the back of having tried so many things.
Right.
And so then with Heart, Soul, and Hustle, in terms of like actually figuring everything out, I just treated it like a big experiment, and I still do. I try all kinds of things. I do workshops, I do coaching programs, I do low ticket offers, high ticket offers, one-on-one, group. And sometimes it works great, and sometimes it's a flop, and sometimes it sticks with the company for years, and sometimes we do it once and we never repeat it. And I think that for me, what has allowed me to learn so much about this space is just being open to the fact that it's a big experiment. And
yes,
it can be really scary when you're talking about like, your livelihood or your money or your goals. But that's just the truth. We never know what is and isn't going to work. So for me, it's just a big experiment where I'm always playing, testing, learning, reading, studying, watching. I was in a mastermind for 5 years, 5 of the 6 years that I was in this program. I just recently hired a new coach that I'm working with, a new coaching program for my business, not for my clients. And I think that just always developing yourself and experimenting really is the secret to getting to that next level, whatever it looks like for you.
Yes. And that's another thing that I really enjoy about being an online entrepreneur and learning these skills and developing them and that's what attracted me also, more than the financial freedom. It was really, I loved the mindset of the people that I was meeting in this space, because there's something about this technology that requires us to show up in a new way. And that new way requires skills that humans haven't had to exercise ever in our development. So this is, in my opinion, like a really, really exciting dynamic time. And so if you're not working on yourself, trying to improve yourself, I think it's very difficult to have those skills so that you can really make the most out of the technology. I almost feel like it's required to work on yourself so that you can make the most of the technology.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that, the message we kind of get told is like, oh, technology is making this easier, and technology is this, and technology is that. But there's always a learning curve, right?
Yeah.
And whether that is a high level learning curve of like understanding the strategy, or a tactical learning curve of learning the software, you have to be willing to push yourself to that next level to be able to figure it out. And that's really what it comes down to with business is figuring out what those next steps are.
Yes. And you've helped me so much with that. Real quick, before we go any further, I want you to please tell the audience, what is Heart, Soul, Hustle? Because they are new to you, most likely.
Yeah. So For those of you who don't know me, again, my name is Zach Spuckler. My company is Heart, Soul, and Hustle. And we work with digital-based businesses to help them scale up their digital products and services with Facebook advertising and launches. And we've been doing that for about 6.5 years. We do that through a variety of methods. We have a course arm of our business where you can take products from us and learn how to execute. We have an agency arm of our business where we actually run ads for you. And we have a consulting arm of our business where we actually come in and work directly with business owners, either one-on-one or in a small group setting, to help them achieve more individualized goals.
Beautiful. I absolutely love that. Yeah, I want to go back to what you were saying about how you were in a mastermind for, I think you said 5 years or 6 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And now you have a new mentor. And I just want to ask you, like, I'm sure that these are sizable investments that you're making to work for such a long period of time. And okay, like, how do you rationalize, justify the expense?
I love this question because I think, especially online or with business opportunities, business development, business coaching, even if you're a local business, you're probably familiar with the idea of like mentorship or hiring a consultant. That a lot of times we kind of get sold this bill of goods, like, oh, you need to invest in yourself, right? I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard that. Like, it's not just an investment in, a course, it's an investment in yourself or your business. And while I think that's true, I think there's also this subtlety that we need to understand that an investment by definition creates a return. And so I do think that there are things that are investments in my business. And then I think there's things that are expenses in my business, right? When I look at a coaching program, a consultant, a team member, a mentor, a mastermind, what I'm saying is, where am I going to see the ROI in my business? And so for me, my hard and fast rule of thumb is, if I don't think I can double my money from the information I'm obtaining or see a direct benefit to my operations that would lead to an increase in revenue, I'm not investing in it. So to get really granular, for example, a lot of people have kind of told me that I need to look into Pinterest. Pinterest advertising is where it's at. Pinterest ads are now everything Pinterest. You should look into Pinterest. And I've looked at some Pinterest courses. And actually in the past, I bought a Pinterest course because I thought we were going to focus on blogging. And we never saw a return on that because my audience really isn't on Pinterest. There's a lot of bloggers on Pinterest. And yes, bloggers in a lot of cases are thinking about starting a digital product, but I don't teach in most of my spaces. I don't actually teach how to go from, I have this idea, to here's my course. I tend to teach, like, you have the idea, you have the niche, let's turn it into the course. And I know that might sound like a subtle difference, and you might be like, well, what's the relevance of that? Because if I know my audience, then I know, hey, right now, at least with what we've got in the works, we're not going to attract our audience on Pinterest. That's bloggers, creators, crafters, makers. I'm swimming upstream there. So if I invest in a Pinterest course, I'm not going to see an ROI. And even if I do see an ROI, it's going to be luck, and it's going to distract me from what's actually growing my business. So I always look through the lens of, where is the ROI on an investment? And I say that because I've made, like you said, big sizable investments. My first investment was 20% of the revenue we generated for the year, my first big mastermind investment. And 20% of revenue, to be clear, not 20% of profit. I would have to.
That's a lot.
The numbers, that's a lot. That's 20% of your profit margin gone. But I really saw the potential, and I could see the direct ROI. And the first year that I was in that mastermind, we increased our revenue 300%. And it proved to be a really wise investment.
Wow. Can we get even more granular? And are you willing to tell me, like, what you did to increase, please?
Absolutely. The biggest thing was, you have to kind of define, where is the investment, the information, and where is the investment, the transformation. And for me, with this particular mastermind, the investment was in the transformation. It was in the way I was thinking about my business. So I can really pinpoint what happened very specifically, which is, I used to have a tendency to kind of shoot from the hip. And basically I would say, oh, I'm going to do this week, and I'm going to do this next week, and I'm going to do that the week after. And the biggest shift that went to a 300% increase in revenue was that we stopped shooting from the hip, and we started saying, what are we doing 3 months from now? What are we doing 3 weeks from now? What do we want the year to look like? And so now we have a practice in our business where every quarter I meet with my team and we map out the next quarter. And every year I sit down and plan out the subsequent year. So I'm not just kind of saying, what am I going to do this year? I'm saying this is what the year is supposed to look like. And are there ebbs and flows? Do things change? Absolutely. But if I go into next week going, how am I going to make money this month? Then I'm scrambling and I'm not operating from a place of planning. I'm not operating the way a CEO would operate. I'm operating in a way that is reactive, not proactive. And that was the biggest shift we had in that first year.
And that's really what you've helped me do is look at my year as 4 quarters and set goals. Like I think the first time I ever did a plan was this year with you in your I'm laughing because look, I'm so used to planning things based on statutes and court orders. And seriously, like that's reactive in a way, right? I mean, yes, you can strategize in a lawsuit, and I do that all the time, but this is a totally different thing. This is, planning your business, planning your goals, planning how you're going to release a product or an idea or a service is completely different than meeting statutory deadlines. And I've never done it. Never. So you really taught me how to do that. And I'm grateful. So yeah, I learned that from you. And that's huge, especially for me.
And one thing that's so nice about this is that it's really interesting because a lot of this is super fundamental. It's like, I don't want to say that it's basic because it's not. It takes a lot to integrate what it is that you want to learn. Yeah. But something to consider is that you really get to get back to the fundamental basics, and the transformation is ultimately what we're looking for in a coach, a consultant, or a mastermind. Is not, or are they going to tell me to plan my quarter, or are they going to help me actually get to a place where I'm doing that? And that is always the lens that I look through an investment. Do I have the discipline or the accountability or the coaching to actually make the changes I'm learning? Because for me, if I'm really geeked up on something, a course is good enough. I'll take the information and run with it. If I'm just like, I know I need to do this, for me, like we're trying to get more consistent with our lead generation outside of advertising, our social media more consistent outside of advertising, and general productivity and habits. I don't have the personal discipline to just do that. But I know if somebody's going to check in on me 3 times a week, that I'm going to be more productive with that. And so I hire a coach or a mentor to help me do that.
Oh, I love that so much. Yes. I love to hear that. And it's really inspiring for me that you are so still, despite the amount of success that you've had and how successful you actually are, that you still are paying for accountability and expanding your skill set and working on your ongoing transformation. To me, it's beautiful.
Well, thank you. And it is really the old adage of like, if you're not growing or you're stagnant, you're dying, right? And I'm not, yes. I think that's a little dramatic. I can be completely transparent and say I've learned how I learn and engage better. I'm not a huge reader like I was when I started. That's mostly because I have the resources to information where I can pay for it in a video format or an audio format or a mentor format. But when I started, I read like crazy. And I still every once in a while get sucked into a good book. I just finished a social media book a couple weeks ago in a couple days. And, but it's all about seasons and access and what works for you. And getting to a place where you can invest in a way that makes the most sense.
Yes. Well, most of my clients in the marketing agency are new to this whole online space. They're not really as fluent in the concepts that you teach and you work with and that I work with all the time. And I think that it's really beneficial for them to listen to you and have you sort of explain that you're still working on your transformation, expanding your skill set, educating yourself constantly. What's interesting about it is that it doesn't, there's a lot written on the subject of how to do various aspects of marketing yourself or your business online, how to sell products online. But there's not, how do I say this? Well, the problem is the platforms are always changing, right? The algorithms are changing. The platforms are changing. New platforms are coming out. So the game is always changing and it changes fast. So what worked a year ago or 6 months ago isn't necessarily working the same way or as well right now. So it requires that you be willing to be constantly educating and adapting. Do you agree?
Yeah. No, this is so great that you bring this up, because with marketing, it's a very dynamic space. It's always changing, it's always evolving. And like you said, what worked a year ago may not work today. That is why it's so important, in my opinion, to start learning the fundamental things that go into business and the fundamental things that go into marketing and even copywriting in some instances. Because the reality is those things are a little more static, right? Sometimes we get really tripped up. Like, in the online space, people are like, oh, you need an email funnel. You need an email marketing system. You need an autoresponder. You need a webinar platform. Okay, that can all be a little like, whoa, what are we even talking about? That's daunting. But we all know, especially if you're a local business already, lead generation has always been a thing. You want to get more people in the door, you need to get your stuff in front of more people. And even the term lead can be a little confusing, but we all know you need potential customers and actual customers, right? We know that. As it gets more complicated and intricate and technical, sure, we may feel a little lost along the way, but that's why it's so important that we really study the fundamentals of business and marketing, right? I work with a lot of, business owners who are very enamored with other businesses because they're like, oh, they're doing, $100,000 launch. And it's like, but what is their, what is their refund rate?
Yeah.
Like what is their profit margin? How much do they spend on advertising? How many leads do they generate? How much is their product cost? What does that do to their profit margin? How many students can they facilitate? And it's like, those things are principles of marketing, business, structure, operations, and those things you can learn. And then the technical aspect of things, you just kind of be as current as you can, right? It's like, without without sounding kind of totally random, it's like, we don't question for the average person, like how you keep up with the Kardashians. You just watch the TV show and it's happening,
Right, exactly.
You know what's going on with them if you're an avid fan. It's the same thing with marketing. You have to fall in love with your business and marketing to the sense where you're just following along. I have blogs, I have emails that I follow, I have people that I follow, I have courses that I follow, memberships, trends, where I'm just paying attention to what is a person who's maybe one step ahead of me doing, right? Because 99.999% of the time, there's always someone one step ahead. And it doesn't even have to be the same industry, right? But you can learn from that and apply it to yours.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that, okay, I've said this a million times already since we started this call, but obviously I'm really impressed with how you know how to do like all the so-called things in the online marketing space. And I'm still in the process of figuring out what feels good, what works, what do I enjoy doing, and what's going to have the return. I still am experimenting myself to find that place where I'm going to be sort of feeling like I'm in flow, and as opposed to coming up against a brick wall or something that just feels almost impossible for me to surmount. And I'm laughing and that's why I started working with you, was the Facebook ads. And thanks to you, I have so much more confidence about the whole Facebook ads, how they work, et cetera. And, but that was the wall I had to scale when we started working together a year ago. And then in the process of doing that, I realized, oh my goodness, I need so much more before I even feel comfortable scaling that wall, And that's what I think that this is what I'm about to say is going to apply to a lot of people who are making pivots in the kind of work that they do, who are maybe sticking their toes into a new business or even an online business, or they have an existing business and they know they need to be able to market it online using these technologies, these platforms, these tools. It's like finding your flow takes exactly what Zach just described. It's experimentation. And what I want everybody to take away from this is that he's been experimenting for a long time and he hasn't even stopped. And so am I. So, and that's the beauty. This morning I was reading, I'm an avid reader too. And this morning I was reading, there's a blogger that I follow on Medium, super successful, who was talking about, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but a new platform that's about it's funded by, oh my goodness, like it's a stellar crew, like all the people from, I have to like, I'm going to put it in the show notes. I'm going to link to it in the show notes so that people can find out what it is, but it's basically like a Bitcoin blogging platform that's brand new.
Yes, I've heard about this.
What is this? I almost want to grab my phone and like research my history so I can figure out what the hell it is while I have you on the phone, and maybe
I can't remember the name, but I am familiar with what you're talking about, where it's like a cryptocurrency based profile.
Yes, I just found it. Oh my goodness. What is it? What is it? What is it? I'm looking. Well, it's here somewhere. I'm like I said, I'll link to it. But this guy said that he's gotten so many followers so fast. And depending on who's reading, how many people are reading your content, I think the concept is that you get Bitcoin wealth in some way that's connected to that. I want to experiment with that, Zach.
Yeah.
Why not?
And here's the thing I tell people is like, look, the reality is there's always going to be a shiny new social media platform, and it's worth investigating. And we have to be willing in business to investigate and abandon. So just like I said, you can learn the algorithm and you can learn this, you can learn that. When Periscope, if anybody remembers Periscope, it was big back in 2015 came out. We leveraged that platform wildly successfully to build our business in a matter of months. I mean, we got to 20,000 plus followers in 5 or 6 months, if I remember correctly, maybe closer to a year. But I know we hit 10,000 within the first several months, and that was huge for us. But guess what? It didn't last. And if we had put all of our eggs in one basket and said, we're going all in, this is going to be what's working, we would have been in big trouble. But instead of that, we were doing exactly what you're doing, which is we were paying attention to blogs, we were reading, and notably we were watching Facebook. And Facebook had like slowly started introducing the concept of live streaming. And suddenly we noticed that one of the big players was going to take over, and Twitter acquired Periscope. And my people aren't on Twitter. Maybe they are, and I just haven't learned it, but it's almost like LinkedIn for me. It's very professional and buttoned up in some sense. But we were like, well, if Twitter bought out Periscope, we should keep one foot in the door there, because that's telling us a big social media company is interested, but also a big social media competitor is also stepping into the ring. And so we kept a foot in both doors. We started talking about live streaming on Periscope and Facebook. And so when Periscope phased out, we weren't in trouble. And we diversified in the sense that we shared our ads training on both platforms. So the only reason I bring this up is that I love that you want to dabble in that platform, but you also have to be willing to investigate and abandon when something doesn't make sense for your business. And you have to look at the big picture when you start to do this stuff, because what a lot of people do is they say, oh, I'm going to be on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And it's like, you can't be everywhere at once. So if you were to investigate this and you blew up and you got a ton of followers and your wealth went up and it was growing your business, I'd be all for it. But if you get in 3 months and you're like, this is just not what it's cracked up to be, you have to be willing to jump. And for me, the most recent example of that is Clubhouse.
Yes.
I'm not anti-Clubhouse, but I tried it for a few weeks. We got 1,000 followers. It was cool. It was fun. I found that it took so much time and energy to grow and create on that I could be using that time in a more beneficial way. And so that kind of comes back to what I'm saying about the big picture is like, the more you educate yourself on the fundamentals of marketing and the fundamentals of advertising and, everything like that, you can say, hey, I know that if I'm spending 4 hours a day on Clubhouse, I'm not spending that time with my team. I'm not spending that money optimizing my ads. I'm not spending that money marketing via email, or that time marketing via email. And so it's costing me more than it's gaining me. And to us, that became very apparent within the first few weeks. And, the other thing that I'll tack on here is like, you also have to think about the lifestyle that you want to have. I have a friend who she Instagram stories 15, 20 times a day, Clubhouse every week, podcast every week, Facebook lives every week, coaching every single week. And, she loves that. And that's great. I don't like feeling like I have to be a million places at once. If I have 3 hours of calls in a day, like I'm good. I'm pretty much tapped out after that. So you just have to be looking at the big picture, the personal lifestyle you want to create, and the fundamentals all at the same time, anytime a new platform comes out. Because the reality is there's always going to be a new platform. I mean, always going to be a new platform. And, I'm trying to remember what the one was. I think it was, I can't remember the exact name of it, but there was this big social media following because it was like unfiltered, no algorithm, everything at the top. And then Apple and Android, or the Google store, basically came out and said, yeah, this is great, but because there's no basically terms of use for speech, from hate speech to free speech, like there just isn't enough black and white for us, we're removing it from our store. And overnight the platform went away. You don't even hear about it anymore.
Ouch.
So just keep those things in mind, that when you invest everything in one place, you go all in on something new, you're always taking a risk. And so it's really beneficial to look at the whole picture the whole time.
I love your perspective. Thanks for saying that. And you know me, I'm like always chasing squirrels. Okay, so right. Okay, so let's talk about something you've mentioned a couple times here, and that is the fundamentals of advertising and marketing. There isn't a business out there that doesn't need to have a grasp of that, in my opinion, in order to get clients, sell products, services, to stay alive. So I want to come back to that, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so, and what I'd like to ask you is, if you're a small business owner or a service provider and you're thinking about dabbling in Facebook ads, where do you recommend I start?
This is a great question. I tell people there's two forms of investment in your business: time and money. So if you're going to invest your time because you're short on money, totally fine. Start with the two best universities in the world, Google and YouTube University. Okay. There are millions of people who create free information all the time around all of these platforms, right? Specifically Facebook advertising. I'm pretty confident if I Google Facebook ad tutorial 2021, it's going to come up on YouTube and I can watch the basics. Now, here's the benefit of that. It's free, but you have to spend more time kind of piecing everything together. If you've got money, invest in a course or a mentor to get the basics, but invest in a course or a mentor who's specific to you. Okay, so if you're a local business, but you like, for full transparency, we don't do a ton with local business. If I'm working with a local business on advertising, it's usually because it's a friend of a friend who wants advice on the fundamentals.
Right.
Don't come learn Facebook ads from me because I teach people how to fill webinars and challenges. If you're like, oh, I run a completely offline business and I rely on foot traffic. Sure, I know what I'm doing, but not for you, right? Find someone, like we mentioned earlier, who's one or two steps ahead of you in where you want to be for the fundamentals, okay? I also mentioned earlier that you can look at people in like similar or non-similar industries and apply what works. But application goes a step beyond theory. You have to learn the theory first, right? It's just like, if like, this is a little nerdy, but if you think about physics in high school and college, if you've ever taken a physics class, the first physics class, they teach you all these formulas and all these things. And then the second physics class you take, they go, well, by the way, all those formulas are like assuming perfect, ideal conditions. It's all theoretical. And now you get to learn the advanced stuff, right? First time that happened, I was like, oh, so everything I just learned is useless? No, everything you just learned sets the foundation for what you're going to learn next. So find somebody, whether it be through YouTube, a course, a mentorship, a coach, who's going to teach you the fundamentals, the theories, the basics in your space. And then you can start learning what works in other spaces, right? We, for example, I know the fundamentals of advertising in the online space, and we have a small e-commerce brand that we run. And that e-commerce brand, we took a ton of fundamental information from our space and applied some of it to what we were learning in the e-com space. I actually invested in a course to learn the theoretical fundamentals in the e-commerce space. And then I started to say, almost like, those movie scenes where like somebody's writing on the wall and you see all like the formulas, like going over them. Like that's what happens. You start to bridge these connections and see these crossovers and see these opportunities. You can't do that without the basics. So learn from a mentor, learn from the internet. And then the last thing I'll say is there's this in-between step, which is test and experiment. So just because it worked for somebody else on the internet doesn't mean it's going to work for you. It doesn't mean you don't have to learn the basics, test the basics, and learn from your own experience. So it's like learn the fundamentals, test the fundamentals, and then learn the advanced strategies to scale yourself up.
Yes. And if you are looking to hire someone to help you, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's trying to navigate that decision?
Always learn the basics first. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is a classic example that I give. Let's say you're going to hire somebody to do Facebook ads for your local business. And they come to you a weekend and they go, your pixel's not firing because we're not optimized. And I think your targeting is all off. If you're like, I have no idea what that means, guess what? You're at the mercy of that business. And I'm not saying people are inherently bad, but the reality is everybody's in business to make money. Why would I come to you as a business owner and be like, oh, sorry, your ads aren't working. It's completely my fault. Right.
Yeah.
But you want to have that fundamental understanding, not just to be able to say like, oh, I don't think that's true, but more importantly, to be able to say, hey, I want to have a high level conversation. My most successful advertising clients, we don't meet and they go, tell me what to do. We meet and we collaborate.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't collaborate with your contractors, employees, agencies that you're working with, it puts you at a disadvantage.
It is so good. And collaboration takes a real communication.
Absolutely.
And a comfort level.
Yeah. We find our clients that we have for over a year, like the results just get better and better. Even with the cost of ads rising, we find that somebody who we have a relationship with that we can really is built on trust and understanding gets even better results.
Yes. Yeah. I can see how that would be. It's so important to find vendors and mentors that you need to support you in your business, that you actually enjoy working with, communicating with, and actually feel supported by.
Yes.
And those were my biggest mistakes when I had my internet startup a bazillion years ago, like right before the iPhone. I mean, the iPhone is what killed my startup. And then also, subsequently, when I was taking everything I'd learned about online marketing at the time and applying it to grow my law firm, I quickly hired and quickly fired people, because if it didn't feel right, then I didn't want to be stuck with working with someone where it didn't feel right. And yeah, it's super, super important. Yeah, it's super important. That's really great advice. Well, is there anything else that you would recommend to listeners out there who are probably incredibly curious about jumping into the online marketing space in order to promote themselves, their business, their product, their service, whatever it is?
Absolutely. The best advice I can give you is find something that inspires you, whether it's a strategy, a tactic, a fundamental, a person, a course, a program, and go all in, right? Play full out and be willing to lose a little bit, be willing. And I'm not talking about financially. I'm just talking about the game, just be willing to not get it right every single time. It's okay to go all in on a course idea and it flops. We've done it, one failure is not your fate. And I think it's super important that we just continue to enforce this idea that we can go all in on something, give it our best shot, fail, and then try again tomorrow. So go all in on something that excites you, that's going to keep you lit up, that's going to keep you going, because ultimately it is going to be hard. It is going to be a challenge. It is going to push you physically, emotionally, mentally, and you've just got to be ready for that. And if you are and you're prepared and you're ready to go all in, then that's exactly what you do. You go all in.
That's such great advice. And I also feel like there's so much rewiring that we need to do in how we conceptualize quote unquote failure. For me, whenever I quote unquote fail or I'm disappointed in how something turns out, those are my biggest lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. You learn, they say failure is a great teacher and even better than success.
Seriously. Well, Zach, thank you so much for taking the time. I know how busy you are with everything you've got going on right now. I'm so grateful. And this was such a great conversation. And thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure to watch you over the last year, work with you over the last year, and now, be on your show. What an honor. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. If people want to find you, follow you, check out what your offers are, where do they go?
Absolutely. The best place to find me is heartsoulhustle.com, or you can follow me over on Instagram at heartsoulhustle. I post on there when I feel inspired, which is more frequently lately than recently. But yeah, Instagram or my website are going to be the best two places.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Zach.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you liked what you just heard, I'd really appreciate it if you would go on to Apple Podcasts and leave a review and rate the podcast. When you do this, it helps make sure that other people who might benefit from this message will find the podcast and hear it. Also, feel free to tell a friend, share it with someone who may also need to hear this message. And you can also follow me on Instagram at I am Jennifer B. Gardner. Feel free to connect with me there. You can always send me a DM if you have a question or you'd like to chat. And if you're looking for information on how to automate how you can get leads for your business and you're feeling sort of overwhelmed by the whole online marketing thing, go to romehowell.com/my strategy and download a free resource I created that will show you my strategy for growing your business using a very simple approach involving email, video, social media, and a simple automated sales funnel. I'll drop the link in the show notes, but you can go to www.romehowell.com/my strategy. I will see you next week. Take care.